there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name is Luke. Today we're going to talk about my love-hate relationship with Nord synthesizers. It's mostly love, but there's definitely some frustration here and there. And I just want to talk about it. I've done I've done basically patch creation on the Nord Lead A1 a couple times, on the Wave 2 a couple times. And people have asked me some questions. And then I just sort of noticed a pattern. I was looking around on YouTubery, and if you search for any synths in the YouTube synth community, all right, in SynthTube, there's tons of a wide variety of videos on just about every family of synthesizers except Nord. If you search specifically for Nord synths on YouTube, what you're going to find is the corporate videos. You're going to see a ton of performances, which are actually tied to the corporate videos. Nord's marketing campaign is that these are for performers, and we're going to feature performers, making just amazing music using their gear. You're going to find a lot of stuff about their stage pianos and their sort of stage performance keyboards. Not a lot about the synths, but when you do find them, it's really sound demos. And that's what other people are doing for the most part. They're doing a lot of let's run through the presets, or let's run through, I've built a patch library for my, Nord Lead 4. Here's the sound demos. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with any of that. But what there isn't is a lot of deep dives into what makes these good, and then what are their shortcomings, right? I searched, I put a very informal question out in the YouTube community on the channel, basically saying, what words come to mind when you think of Nord, right? And this is what we got. So what I'm doing in this video, basically, is I'm going to focus on the Nord Wave 2 here, but I'm going to cover the things I love and the things I hate. And it's not a video intended to say, Jesus Christ, Nord, you got to fix this stuff. It's not. I don't expect them to do that. I'm just a small voice out in the wilderness. But, if you agree or disagree with the things I'm citing as things I like, or the things that I say, these are the things that really annoy me, say something in the comments, put your experiences or your thoughts there, okay? So let's get started. So, what are these synths good at? Well, I think they're good at everything. All the sounds you're going to hear in this are patches that I've made. Something that I find, so I've got a fairly decent collection of hardware and software synths, and the Nords play well with everything. They blend with everything. If you're trying to think of specific kinds of instruments that they're good at making, well, all the synths tend to be multi-timbral with 4 layers, or at least 2, but generally 4. Certainly the synth family. And if you're going to make use of all of those layers, you're going to gravitate towards sounds with a lot of stuff going on. So that's going to be pads, that's going to be leads that you can do interesting performance things with on your mod wheel, your velocity, or your expression pedals, where you use those layers. Layer 1, 2 is the basic sound. Layer 3, 4 is I brought the mod wheel up because I'm doing kind of some sort of expression thing in there. But Nord synths, as far as the sound of the synth, at least in the A1 and the Wave 2, they blend well with everything. I've got Waldorf, Modal, Moog, tons of soft synths, all the native instruments, Arturia stuff, whatever, Novation synths. I have no problem getting these to play nice in the mix. And I think that's true in the music industry as well, because I don't think these would be utilized as performance synths if you couldn't get them to work well on stage when you're a gigging musician or you're a studio musician or you're a hired gun and you got to come in, you're going to cover these synth parts for, whoever the artist is that you're covering for. They play nice, they mix well. So as far as what are these synths good at, I think the sky is the limit. They're good at whatever job you need them to do. And as that, they tend to be they try to be sort of a jack of all trades. They try and give you not vanilla, but a little bit of everything. Now, the downside to that is that since they try and do a little bit of everything, they're not specialized. They're not exotic creatures, right? So you're always going to have other synths that do bonkers, batshit, crazy stuff that Nords are not going to do. And that's okay. When I get to the end of this, I'll talk about where I think these are going to fit in your stable of synthesizers, your synth herd, okay? But as far as what are they good at, they could do everything. Basses, leads, pads, ambient stuff. You want textures. This is definitely a good tool for that. So that said, let's get into things I love and hate. Okay. Well, actually, let's demo another sound. Well, actually, let's talk about this sound for a second. So this sound uses 2 layers, all right? The first layer is this one. So what is this sound? This sound is a sample. I sampled it from another VST. I actually went into a VST that I liked that particular texture from, and I wanted to use it on here. And this is a pattern that happens a lot. The Wave 2, because it has sampling capabilities, people will use this to sample other gear, hardware or software, because it allows them to consolidate their palette of sounds down into a single area, right? Or it allows them to deal with problematic hardware. You got a synth that won't stay in tune. You've got, weird stuff that's, you want to see. I've got a Lyra 8 sitting over there on the shelf. I love the Lyra 8, but it's just bonkers, right? And as far as trying to fit that into a composition in a, I make Berlin School ambient prog rocky kind of stuff. Trying to fit the Lyra 8 in there as anything other than an individual sort of a pedestal piece, right? It's like, here's the tracks of the album, and this track's going to be Lyra 8. It's going to be a tone poem using the Lyra 8's crazy sounds. That's a doable thing, but I can sample the Lyra 8 into here and turn it into an instrument that leverages that amazing sound of the Lyra 8 in a way that it would be impossible to do on it. Another thing people do, I've seen other videos where people were talking about what they do with their Wave 2. They sample their vintage gear with it because the vintage gear weighs a lot, is finicky, but they want to go gig, right? So if they're going to go out performing, they don't want to haul, a Rhodes piano with them, or they don't want to haul, their old Moogs or their Prophets. So they sample them and then use them appropriately. And because they're working in an ensemble, not necessarily a solo bit, are you going to hear the difference? Does a sample fully recreate the awesomeness that is, a vintage Prophet? No. But in the mix of the performance that you're in your band with, is this going to work? Yeah, for most people, that works. So again, we're talking middle of the road, performances. And it doesn't have to be going out performances. I don't play out since COVID, right? I just don't do it. I used to play out. Now it's all streamed. So everything's in the studio, right? And it plays nice in the studio. Anyway, so this is a sample. All right. Out of one of the Native Instruments expansions, I sampled it. And then the other layer is, right? That's the chop saw to sync oscillator in the Nord. I'll get into the different oscillator types in a bit, and we'll talk about those. But that reminds me of vintage Tangerine Dream, vintage, late 80s Tangerine Dream. And I just layer those two things together. And that gets me the sound I want. All right. So, anyway, That said, let's move on to pros and cons. These are the things I love, the things I hate. I'll play more sounds further in. Okay. Number one, okay, thing I love about Nord synths, build quality. It's, it's cliche to say it's built like a tank, but it's built like a frickin' tank. All right. It's a metal chassis on all the synths. I don't know if you could see it, if it's in the shot, the Nord A1's up here. All their stuff's made of metal. It's heavy without being so heavy. It's not a pain in the ass to lug around, but the build quality is good. The knobs, right? The buttons, everything is solid. I've got this Lead A1. I've had it for almost 9 years, and it works exactly the same as the day I unboxed it. Like the knobs are not looser. The buttons are not wearing out. Even the paint is there, and I've got my hands on it all the time. The displays are all solid. The build quality is better than any synth I own. Okay, better build quality than my Moog synths. It's better build quality than the Waldorf synths. I'm just naming some of the other synths that have metal chassis. Certainly better build quality than Arturia, Novation, things like that. Modal. Those are all excellent synths, but I'm talking about the way the thing is built. These are handmade, like made by hand, assembled in Stockholm, and they are just bar none. Does this mean nobody's ever had a build quality issue? No, of course there are. And if you go to the internet, you'll find people who are like bitching. It's like, oh yeah, the quality on this new synth that came out, or the electro here is problematic. But that's the internet, right? You're always on the internet going to see more sort of traffic from people who are pissed than people coming out saying, man, this is awesome. I've got no problems, right? You're going to see the bitching. From my perspective, okay, and I'm going on 9 years as a Nord synth owner, never a problem, okay? Build quality is awesome. Now, the flip side of that, they're frickin' expensive, all right? As synths go, if you measure feature by feature what they do against other synths, there are much cheaper synths that do way more, okay? And yes, they can be more specialized. They're getting into a very knife edge sort of, zone where they're specializing in a particular thing, and that this can't do. And that's fine. So there's a balancing act there, right? Build quality versus cost. They are expensive. Certainly the stage pianos are crazy expensive, but like the Nord Lead A1, it's probably I think that's the cheapest synth they make. I think it's $2,000. I think it's up. Because when I bought mine, I think I paid close to $1,200 new. Maybe it was on sale, but this was this was pre-pandemic. And I think the prices are up due to, global supply chain shortages or whatever. But the A1's $2,000. The Wave 2 is $2,900. And those are the low end of the Nord price range, but you're paying for precision crafted, rock solid build quality, and a few other things. Now, are you paying for the name? Probably a little bit. It may be an Apple sort of thing or a Teenage Engineering sort of thing. But do I think it's worth it? Yes. Am I a middle-aged white guy in the eastern seaboard of America who's also a tech worker? Yeah. Okay. So I have a little surplus income, right? I'm not rich. I got a 20-year-old still living at home. But, they're within range, right? You can save your pennies. You can buy them used, and they're not so bad, but they are expensive. So plus side, build quality, great. Downside, cost. All right. Now, let's do number 2 here. Second thing, performance modulation is awesome. Okay. These are marketed as synths for performers, right? In fact, here, let's perform a little tiny bit more. So here's another patch. These, again, everything you hear today is stuff I've built. So because I haven't prepared anything, you see me only playing black keys. That's because I'm in pentatonic. I'm not gonna screw around trying to improv anything. All right, we'll disassemble that in a second. So 2 things I love. Performance modulation. As far as synths go, right, these are definitely marketed as sage on the stage kind of things. But you're going to see Nord synths being played by people up on stage. Performance, and that's their thing. They're like, oh yeah, performance modulations are good. Velocity, mod wheel, pedal control, aftertouch, morphing, these are the modulation sources that can be mapped to everything. If I double tap my velocity, there's a section in here called morph. It's got 4 buttons: velocity, wheel, pedal, and aftertouch. I'm going to double tap on velocity, and then I'm going to go to any knob I want on the front of this synth. And basically I can set a modulation positive or negative, like any range I turn while this is active. So, right, we can do a little filter, we can do a little resonance, we can do the attack time on the amp, and for velocity, because velocity is per key, you can't change global parameters, like some of the effects parameters I can't change. Like I can't change reverb level. Oh, I can. Sorry, that was on the, I guess that's on the A1. On the A1, you couldn't change reverb level per velocity, but you can on the lead 2, on the wave 2, excuse me. But basically, I can go through and set these performance modulations to modulate just about anything. And now we'll go to wheel, and we'll say we're going to change our os control, and we can change our panning too, right? And then when I go to play, now you're not going to, I just arbitrarily change some things. So I'm not set up to do a demo of this, but what I'm saying is, if you measure the value of a synth by the size of its mod matrix, okay? If you look at the mod matrix as far as the performance controls are concerned on the Nords, velocity, wheel, pedal, aftertouch, impulse morph, it's almost infinite. You can map everything to those performance controls, which means you can make really, really expressive patches if you play, right? If you have this keyboard or this, if you have this synth set up, connected to a very simple step sequencer with no modulation channels, you're not going to get a lot out of it. It wants to be touched by a human, or at least the recording of a human. So when you're sequencing, you can go in and draw in some of these performance, draw in your velocity curves, draw in your mod wheel or your pedal or your aftertouch curves. You want to do that to get the most out of these synths. Okay, that is definitely a pro, something I love. Now, something I hate is the internal modulation routing. So if you look at it, mod matrix from how many LFOs does this have, how many envelopes does it have, and what can they be mapped to, it's sad. It's so frustrating because it's actually getting worse. If you look at the Nord Lead 4 versus the Nord Lead A1 versus now the Wave 2, the amount of it's sort of LFOs and envelope modulation mappings is going down. So on the Nord Wave 2, it has one LFO. Now this is 4-part multi-timbral. So what I'm talking about is a single layer. So you actually do have one of these for every layer, and that's fine. That's great, in fact, but you can't cross layer modulate. So on a given layer, you've got one LFO. All right. And that LFO can be mapped to only one target at a time. So you've got os pitch, os control, which is like, we'll get to what os control is. The oscillators here are interesting. Or it can be mapped to the filter. That's it, right? You can't map this LFO to the oscillator pitch and the filter at the same time. It's intensely frustrating. There is a modulation envelope, okay, specifically that can target oscillator pitch or os control, but nothing else. You can't map it to, any of the envelope decay times, attack times. You can't map it to effects. You can't map it to the filter. It's only for being mapped to the oscillator and only those two parameters, pitch and control. It's very frustrating, right? Does it mean that the synth is a bitch to program? No, it's perfectly fine. I can make tons of stuff, right? But I love the performance mod is limitless, but the internal mod, LFO, envelope, it's so limited. Why? I don't know. I'm not going to whine about it. I'm just stating truth. Okay, it frustrates me. Additionally, the oscillator, the modulation envelope is just an attack decay envelope or an attack release envelope. It's not a full ADSR. It does go positive or negative, but that's what it is. Now, I can understand their philosophy maybe because this is performance oriented. There's a limitation to how much control they can put on the front panel. I don't know. I see empty space here, so we could have put a few more knobs on it. I've seen this, the stage 3, plenty of knob space, but it's lacking. All right. On the A1, all of the envelopes are ADR or ASR. They're not full ADSR, and that's okay. Again, not limiting, but not terribly limiting, but it is a limitation. It's frustrating. The amp envelope is an ADSR on the Wave 2, but it can only be mapped to the amp. That's what it is. There is no other option to map this anywhere. The filter envelope is dedicated and locked to the filter, right? On many synths, the filter envelope can be applied to at least the filter and other destinations where it makes sense. If I'm going to map it to the filter, maybe I want to map it to something that changes the timbre of my oscillator. Anyway, so category 2, performance mod, awesome, super extensive. That's the pro. The con, the thing I hate, the internal mod is limited both in number. Can I have more than one LFO? Can I have maybe an extra envelope? And then also its targets are generally single targets. You can't do multiple targets. Okay. Oh, so frustrating. Anyway. All right. Let's take this sound apart. So we've got this harmonic bell sweep. All right, so this patch has 4 layers. I'm using all 4. And if we turn them off, let's see. So the first layer is this Prizm Bell. This is a sample. Again, actually from Native Instruments. I sample a lot of their stuff because they're great timbres. This is off of, I think, one of their synths that was built in Reactor. I don't remember what it is. But as far as like that, I think my first synth was the Roland D10, which used these sampled attacks like the chiff on a flute and things like that. These little short PCM samples that was like the attack of the sound and then layered synths behind it, linear additive synthesis. This is that sort of approach. I'm saying I want this sort of bell tone that I sampled off of this Native Instruments synth, and I'm going to layer it with this, which is just a super saw with some chorus, right? And then behind those, I've got this, which is an octave saw. So the combination of that, and gives us this. Right. So you can make great sounds with this, especially the multi-timbralness, building in layers, right, is something I really like doing. I've always done it that way. If you like the idea of building in layers, here's a quick aside. If you like the idea of building in layers, but you don't want to buy a Nord synth for this, you want another multi-timbral synth that you can build in layers in, go with Roland. Like any of the Roland synths, you can, I think most of them are 4-part plus a rhythm part. And you can, install models on each of the 4 parts and start layering those together. If you want something even cheaper, the Blofeld, I think, is 16 parts or 8. I don't remember. It's 8 or 16 parts. Those are layers that can all be addressed all together, right? So you can actually layer up to 16 individual pieces together and make these really complex things, because you can have early stuff happen when you strike the key. You can have later things happen, fade in over time as you sustain, right? It's a great mechanism for doing synth programming. Anyway, all right, so where are we? So the first thing was build quality, great. Cost, not so great. Second thing was performance modulations, fantastic. Internal modulation, a little weak, a little lacking. Okay, let's move on to our third thing. Okay, third thing in a love-hate relationship with me and Nord is multi-timbral. As I was just saying, that was a good segue. I should have segued in a little bit better. 4 parts, 4 layers, and they're multi-timbral. You can actually address them individually over MIDI, right? So each of the layers can be addressed individually. And so you can take a single synth and I can write 4 parts. I could put a bass part on layer 1, a pad on layer 2, a lead on layer 3, and a rhythm bit on layer 4. Assign MIDI channels 1, 2, 3, 4 to those layers, and then sequence them individually, right? So you could actually, it's really 4 synths in a box, right? I've got a video, I'll link it up in the corner, where I was using a Launchpad Pro Mark III, which is a 4-track sequencer, among other things. I had attached that. It was a Launchpad Pro Mark III attached to a Nord Lead A1, which is also a 4-part multi-timbral. I think everything from Nord is that, at least 4 parts. And I was sequencing the A1 using the Launchpad's 4 sequencers. And it was just this super compact travel kit. It was, a grid with sequencer, and I can play on it, and a synth that technically fits in a duffel bag, with all the gear and everything I would need, all the cabling. It's like 1 bag, trip you go. It's 4-part band. It's good to go, right? So the multi-timbral nature of Nord synths is my go-to. Like, if I have a choice between a synth that's multi-timbral and a synth that's not, I don't care how awesome the not multi-timbral synth is, it's going to have to carry a lot of weight in order to get me to pick it up, as opposed to the multi-timbral one. I prefer multi-timbral synths. And the MIDI implementation is the second half of this. The multi-timbral nature is awesome, and the MIDI implementation of that is so good. These things are a dream to control, okay? Every control both emits and takes in MIDI CCs. And if you have, if you're working in a DAW, certainly, Bitwig, Ableton, whatever, I use Ableton. If you can transmit MIDI CCs, you can script this synthesizer fully from your DAW. So, if you want to really get in there and build a complex system of control scripts that as you're playing or as you're moving through your performance or you're playing your song, major reprogramming of the synth is happening underneath what you're doing, the Nord synths will let you do that, because everything is mapped and available over MIDI CCs. Now, a lot of people are like, I want a VST representation of the synth that I just drop in my DAW and it communicates to. Well, much like the Modal app or the Moog VSTs. That exists as a third party. Someone has built it, but I don't use it. I actually prefer the simplicity and control of mapping them directly. And if you read the manual, okay, it's all very clearly stated, the MIDI implementation charts at the back of the manual. Check it out. So that's what I love in that domain. The thing I hate in that domain is certainly on the Nord Wave 2, only 2 outs, left and right stereo outs. On the old Nord synths, they all had 4 mono outs, at least 4 assignable outs. Like the A1's got 4 outs. So I can assign it 1 per layer, or I can split it up so layers 1, 2 is on, left and right 1. Layer 3, 4 is on left and right 3 and 4. You could do this on the earlier ones, but you cannot do this on the Wave 2. It frustrates the hell out of me, because a lot of times I just want my synths in mono. I'll deal with stereo effects in the box, right? I'll process them afterwards. But they seem to be regressing, or maybe it was a cost-saving measure or something, but drives me nuts. So multi-timbral, awesome. MIDI implementation, awesome. But only stereo outs on the Wave 2 feels like a regression. I don't like it. All right. But to that effect, let's play another sound. So this is another sound I built. Let's see. So that illustrates two things I want to share with you. One is this is a sample of a Lyra 8. Okay. I pulled the Lyra 8 out. I tuned the oscillators as well as I could to C, and then sampled it across, I think 5 octaves. And then I also did an F sharp as well. So I didn't like do every note chromatically. I just did C and F sharp. Took those samples, loaded it in as a sample, and then layered it left and right, split it out, applied a little chorus, a little bit of delay, and a big ass cathedral reverb with sort of a bright shimmer and a choral effect on the reverb tails, and it just makes for So I don't know. I should probably share that patch with people. Say, here you go. Here's a Lyra swell. That's just fantastic. Okay, let's go on to 4. All right, something else I love about Nord synths. Okay, let's talk about the oscillators. Nord oscillators are bonkers. Okay. I'm used to synths where here's an oscillator or here's a set of oscillators, oscillator 1, 2, 3, right? And standard subtractive synthesis sort of pattern, right? Nords model that, but it's not the same. Nords have weird oscillators. They have oscillators that are oscillator collections or configurable oscillators. Okay. Let me do this, we'll initialize the program. Okay. All right, so sawtooth. Now you're not gonna be able to see this. I'm not gonna go into it. There are other videos that detail this, but basically the Nords only have one oscillator, and that oscillator has different configurations you can put it through. And the configurations within the sort of category of configuration, there are specific waveforms. So this is the basic oscillator configuration. You've got your different waves, but there are other categories, and the other categories sometimes have additional oscillators brought in. Okay, so if you want to be able to detune, if you want to change the shape, right? You want morphable oscillators, that has that. If you want to have layered oscillators, you can do that, right? So you want multi-oscillators. It consumes only one voice. It's one oscillator, but its configuration internally may have 2 or 3 oscillators, or it could have oscillators in FM configurations, or it could have what Nord calls wavetables. It's not like the Waldorf sweepable wavetable. They are timbres, right, right, these are organ timbres. These are what Nord calls wavetables. Right, that's an electric piano. Does that sound good to your ears? Well, as a raw waveform, no. But once you start filtering this, their wavetables are the raw timbre waves for other things, right? Electric pianos, flute, wind instruments, saxophones, reed instruments, things like that. That's what Nord calls wavetables. But the point is, Nords only have one oscillator, but it is a sort of smart configurable oscillator that, depending on how you've got it set, has multiple waveforms already sort of mixing together in it. So if you want a wave with a sub that's a square, that's in there. You want a sine that's a super sine that's being detuned over time, and you can modulate the detune. That's in there. So what's great about it is that it's simple. All right. Because there's only sort of one oscillator, and really there's only one modulation sort of possibility on it, it's os control. Depending on what configuration you're using, the control parameter does different things. It might detune things, or it might, change the pitch of the sync oscillator if you're using a sync sound. And what that does is it allows you to very quickly zero in on the sound you're looking for, because you sort of go through a tree structure. You say, give me this category, and within this category, I want this type, and of that type, I want this specific waveform. So it's like, I want sync sounds, and I want sync sounds based on square waves, and I want the square wave to be able to, I want to modulate the pitch of the syncing oscillator, right? It's boop, boop, boop. 3 choices and you're there. And what that lets you do is quickly build sounds up. And then from an experimental perspective, once you've got the sounds built and the filtering the way you want it and the effects applied the way you want it, you can go back to that nice, simple oscillator and start changing the categories up just to explore and see what happens. So it makes both mimicking sounds you want, and then from a performance perspective, you show up with your synth, you go to a band, they're like, hey man, I need a thick sawtooth pad that sounds like Van Halen, 1984. It's easy to quickly get to that. So from a performance perspective, that's nice, or from a sampling perspective, that's really trivial. But then from a studio use exploration, you can take the sounds that already exist, presets that are there, and then just start tweaking the wave categories, the oscillator categories and types, with everything else in the patch staying the same. And you'll get these really interesting, dramatic changes and discover new sounds. So it's a plus. Okay. I really like the fact that it's so simple. Now, the downside to that is, in every Nord synth I've used, there's only one, right? So the A1 and the Wave 2, I haven't used the Wave, but there's just one oscillator. It would be nice if there was 2. Okay. Just like, in some ways it's limiting, because I can't, if they don't have the configuration and the type I'm looking for, they might have a close approximation, 80% of what I want, and then I can wangle it the rest of the way they're using effects and the filtering. But I think that's their intent, get you as close as they can, relatively speaking. If I just had a second oscillator, just duplicate the bank for the oscillator right next to it. Just give me 2, let me mix, give me levels on each one. I don't want a mix knob. I want level for OS1, level for OS2. That would be great. And so that's my love-hate. Love the simplicity, love the sort of clarity, and I love the speed of the design. I hate that I've only got one of them. All right. So, all right. Let's go on. What was that? That was, I guess, number 4. Let's do number 5. 5. Morph buttons. Okay. Over here on the edge of the Nord, there's this tiny little button, Impulse Morph. All right. If you've used a Novation Peak or Novation Summit, you've seen something very similar to this. They've got 2 little morph buttons over on the side as well. And what it is a button that when you hold it down, you can turn whatever knobs you want, and it basically records those settings so that when you press that button again, all those knobs will silently jump to that setting. Okay, it's fantastic for adding just another performance modulation thing. It's a button you can press to radically change your sound. Love it. The thing I hate about it, it needs a frickin' attack and release time. I want 2 knobs next to it because it's an instantaneous change. It's not a fade. It's not morph. They use the word morph, but it's not a morph. It's a shift, right? Novation got it right in their recent firmware. Theirs was very similar on the Peak and the Summit, but now, at least on the Peak and the Summit, you can specify a rise time and a fall time for that morph. So it will actually morph to those values, and then release will morph back to the original values. So Nord, I'm whining a little bit on this one, but your morph is awesome, but 2 things. 1, it needs an attack and a release time on that. And secondly, I'd love more than 1, right? It's being able to have maybe a bank of 3 or 4 morph buttons, that would be even sweeter. All right. Let's see. Let's play another patch. Where are we going? D51. All right. There we go. All right, so this is sort of a split, okay, which I don't do splits a lot. I don't know if you can see the light lit up here. There's stuff on this part and stuff on this part, and it crossfades between them. Let's play part of this. All right, let's take this apart real quick, okay? This is another one I put together. This one's kind of silly in that there's this layer. Right, that's just it's just a saw, right? Slightly filtered. The LFO's moving the filter very slightly so we get some breathing in and out. The other thing happening underneath here is space noises. Because I do a lot of Berlin School or ambient sort of cosmic rock. I make a lot of patches that are, space music. So this is a sample, okay, that I sampled with my phone. If I turn everything off here, turn off all the modulation and the filtering, bring this down, what is this? That's my clothes dryer. It's a bunch of laundry spinning around in the clothes dryer with buttons hitting the front window. But we turn it into space split. Anyway, all right. So sampling is awesome. You should absolutely get yourself a sampler, either in software in your DAW, use a sampler, and go record goofy shit with your phone. Okay, you don't need a giant sound, sampling rig with the fuzzy microphone, windscreen, and all that. You don't need a field recorder. Okay, if you've got a phone, you've got enough to do basic sampling for synthesis, okay? You don't need pristine sounds unless you're going to go, you're trying to record. If you're trying to record instruments, I'm going to sample this nylon string guitar. I'm going to sample this violin. Sure, there are rigorous things you have to do. But if you're making synth noises for, space music or ambient, just use your phone, walk around, sample everything. But there's a dog barking over there. Go sample it, pitch it down 2 octaves and reverse it, add some reverb. Now you've got like the rumble of giants, release the Kraken because it's a chihuahua down the street barking. Use that. Anyway, sample on your phone. That's a different video. Okay, 6, final thing I hate about Nord. Software support is awesome. Okay. The patch librarian and the sample management for Nord is the best I've used on any piece of software. Okay. Some of other things are very good. Moog, very good. Cobalt, very good. Nord's is better. Okay. It is just the best as far as runs well, very quick, transferring things back and forth, very fast, even over USB. And it's what I would expect it to be. You can, drag and drop. You want to reorder your patches into banks and stuff. It's literally dragging it and dropping it across 2 windows. It's just the best. Okay. I love it. The dark side of that it bugs the crap out of me is that the bank and patch arrangement across the Nord synth line is scattered. On this Wave 2, I've got banks that are lettered A through I, A, B, C, D, et cetera, et cetera. And within each bank, there are, I think, let's see, let's do the math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 5. There are 25 patches in each bank, 25 in each bank, which is weird. And their numbering is 11. So the first patch is A11, okay? And then it goes up to 15. That's the first 5. And then it jumps to 21, and then that's another 5. So it's, 11 to 15, 21 to 25, 31 to 35, 45, 55. That's the 25 patches in bank A. And then it goes to bank B. It's bonkers. I thought Roland did weird shit. This is crazy, okay? And then on the A1, it's different. On the A1, there are banks A, B, C, D, etc. right? But bank A contains patches 1 through 50. Okay, and then it goes to bank B. So it's different. And I can only imagine it is just as weird on the other synths. But so software support, great. Getting the patches in here, organizing them, great. But the logical brain connection for the bank and patch connections, ABC and then numbers, is bizarre. It's just weird shenanigans. Okay, so that is it. Okay, so that's 6 sort of things that I really love and hate about Nord. Okay, so let's see. How do we want to close this up? So I guess in closing, what I'm trying to sort of convince people of, I'm trying to provide a resource here. There aren't very many videos in this category featuring Nord stuff. Usually it's performances and jams. Things to think about when considering a Nord synthesizer, okay? They're workhorses, okay? They're built like tanks that will last you forever, okay? They're going to do all the median work, okay? They can deliver just about any kind of sound you want in the 80% bracket. They're going to cover 80% of the map, right? Some of the fringe stuff, they don't do very well. But for the majority of stuff, this is good. This is a great foundational synth, an A1, a Wave 2. Okay, either one of those would make a great foundational synth. It gives you a lot of functionality for the money. It is expensive, but it is built well, and it provides 4 multi-timbral synth layers that are covering 80% of the map. This is worthwhile. Is it a little painful based on cost? Yeah, it's a stretch, okay? But it is truly, and I know this is a cliche, it is truly an investment. If you buy one of these things, learn to use it fully, read that manual. This will serve as a foundation for the rest of your synth studio, a really solid foundation. Okay. It's going to be able to say, I can, now that I've got this solid sort of base upon which to build, I can go look at the bizarre shit on the fringes and not feel like they're too specialized, right? It's like, oh, I want a purely FM synth. Well, this does all the vanilla 2, 3, 4 oscillator FM stuff. Not all of it, but it does a big chunk of that map, right? So you can go look at the bizarre FM stuff. You don't have to worry about, oh, I need a DX7. Not really, you know. You can go pick up a Lyra 8 because it's bonkers, but this has sampling in it. So if you want to, invent some weird shit on your Lyra 8, sample that into here and then use it in a more musical context. Because let's face it, tuning the Lyra 8 is a real crapshoot. It's a good foundation. Okay. These will extend or make more useful your edge gear. Okay. And then finally, it's a great performance tool, yes, but it's a great studio tool. If you're a jammer and you like to do jams, having this stuff available with all of the performance controls makes jamming. Any performance controls are also useful for jamming because people, they forget. It's like, oh, I'm not on stage performing in concert. Well, yeah, you are. If you're streaming a jam, you're basically on stage performing. This works well for onstage performances. Nord synths are meant to be performed with. So if you're in that boat, you're doing jams, check this out and consider using it. All right. Okay. So I think that's probably good for now. That has been my spiel, my rant. I am a Nord fan, but I am not a Nord fan boy, right? I think they're useful. I think they're very good, but they've got pluses and minuses, and I've listed the ones here that I think are important. Last few little pieces. Shit I don't care about. Keybed. Yeah, I don't care about the keybed. Nord keybeds are good enough for me, okay? They feel good. I've played synths with shit keybeds. This ain't it. This is a solid keybed for this Synth Seeker, okay? If you are at a point in your performance career where keybed truly matters down to that small percentile, go play one and then make your decisions. But if this is I don't know. I'd say it's easily as the A1's key beds. You can't get the A1 in the rack form anymore. It's been discontinued, but you still can get the synth form. The A1 synth key bed felt fine to me. It felt like a synth key bed. It was lighter than, say, a subsequent 37. The sub 37's key bed is heavier and feels more solid to me than the A1 key bed. But the Wave 2's key bed, I think, feels better than the subsequent key bed. It's a little heavier. It's waterfall keys, so slides are easier. It's more like an organ key bed. I prefer that. But in the key bed stuff is in a category of I just don't care. That is a very personal thing. If keyboards, if you go to play a synth and the keys like bug you, you're like, oh my God, this feels like shit. I can't play it. Then you need to go somewhere and play one of these to make your decision. I can't guide you on that one. Another thing I don't care about, people are like, Nord synths sound cold. Oh, they're digital. Oh, they're, it's not analog. Analog versus digital is super subjective, very much a personal thing. I don't care. I think it sounds good. They cover, again, 80% of the sonic map of what I need to cover. I think maybe the earlier synths were a little cooler, meaning a little less warm, not cool like the Fonz. I have heard like the Nord Lead 2 reminds me a great deal of the Access Virus. The A1 and the Wave 2 do not remind me of the Access Virus when I hear them. So if you want that sound of the Virus, maybe you want to buy a used Lead 2, but if you want to explore Nord. But I think these synths are neither warm nor cold. They are chameleons trying to cover as much map as possible. All right. And then lastly, color. If you don't like the red, you don't like the red. I'm sorry, paint it. But anyway, so that's about it. Thank you so much for playing and spending some time with me. As always, you have been watching Synth Seeker. Have a great day.